Welcome to Horror Makes Us Happy, the podcast where we ask the question, what is it about horror that makes us happy? And then we pause awkwardly. Your hosts are Steve Becker and myself, Chris Whitman, and you can find out more about us at our website, horrormakesushappy.com. We also have a link tree there to all the other possible avenues of finding Horror Makes Us Happy podcast, as well as Steve and I's projects, my project Pieces, which is piecesofflesh.com, and a link to purchase Steve's book, A Guide to the Recovery Toolbox. All those things.
Yes.
So, before we get started, this is the trigger warning. We do it every single show. I love this part because it's liables, it's legal, it's. We should just get a lawyer to do this for us, or the Micro Machines guy. He can do it real fast. But yes, this is a horror podcast, so we do have to disclaim that we may delve into sensitive subjects such as physical abuse.
Don't have
abuse,
to. We choose to.
Well, yeah. We choose to talk about these horrible things and the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are badass.
Do you use your powers for good or for awesome?
Yeah. Anyway, with that very rough intro out of the way, Steve, what do we got coming up?
Not a whole lot. Just got done going to 2 conventions, so I am all tuckered out.
Yeah, you did.
I'll be doing that for a little while.
Yeah, I guess it's my turn now.
Yeah, right. Still doing 3 events on Discord weekly. We've got the movie stream on Saturday nights, and then on Sundays we do a listen party and a drawing party. Listen party is we share an episode from our podcast and then just sit there and chat about it with anybody who comes and join us. Give background information, talk about stuff that maybe got cut out of the episode or what have you. And the drawing party is Chris working on his horror-themed webcomic, which he mentioned earlier, piecesoffflesh.com. But today we are talking to Mr. Scott Cramton. I almost said Crampton, like Barbara. I know it's so close. I keep wanting
it pronounces the same way. And actually, I just met her literally this week for the first time.
Nice.
She is the best, isn't she?
She's really cool.
But no, Scott Cramton, founder of the Murder Mystery Company and American Immersion Theater. How are you?
I'm great. Yeah.
Awesome.
Thanks for joining us.
I just met Barbara Crampton and asked her about the last name and seeing how if she had anybody, because she has hers with a P. Mine's stupidly pronounced with a P, but doesn't have it in there for some reason. And apparently a lot of Cramptons took it out after the war, but I can't think of why. It's just confusing. So, but she did. Yeah, I got to see the 40th anniversary of Reanimator with her there at the Overlook Film Festival. And the fun part was she stayed in there, and when she screams in the movie, she screamed in the back of the theater, which I thought was pretty fun.
That's awesome.
Cool. Well, this podcast will be less about your body of work and more about you as a horror fan. Of course, anything related to your work may come up as part of that conversation, but like I said, the main theme is on you being a horror fan. Excuse me. That said, anything that we ask that you're not comfortable talking about, you just say pass and move on. But starting with childhood, what are some of your earliest memories of scary things?
Honestly, I've always just found that stuff more interesting, from Skeletor is more interesting than He-Man, to Halloween's just more entertaining than Christmas, those things are just, they're more about imagination. They're more, anything can happen. And I always think that's one of the big things. I also, I feel like I had a pretty big imagination as a kid and still currently. And, just it was dark, or I found myself as walking around the block or something like that at night. I'd always be like, is somebody watching me? And then I just start running, which is probably my best bit of cardio that I do.
Cool. So other than He-Man and maybe Halloween in general, no particular movies or books or stories stand out to you?
Oh, gosh. I mean, yeah, sure, of course. So much of my memories are from doing things. I run an experiential theater, and that's what I do. But Halloween for me, the actual movie of Halloween was, I know is a little bit boringly generic to say that's their big thing. But, I've watched that 100 times, and it just hits so differently than everyone. And then as I went to I went through high school. One of my first jobs at Blockbuster Video, and I watched horror movies just alphabetically through Blockbuster Video indiscriminately. And then during class, I used to read this. I'm trying to remember the name of the book. It was something really weird, but it was like Bill Bob's book of spooky movies, and it was just like every horror movie alphabetically, like that they could put in. Nowadays, that would just be like, Internet Movie Database or something like that. But at the time, you were like discovering horror movies. I was like, and I would just like literally read every description of every horror movie. I don't know what I was going for. I think horror seems obtainable. Like if you watch, this back in the day, like Back to the Future, for example, it feels really unobtainable to make. Some of the bigger action movies, like I can't imagine, filming a Jackie Chan movie or something. But on my best day of my life, maybe I could film a little bit of Halloween. When it comes right down to it, like Michael Myers isn't exactly doing a backflip. He's not going through a shopping cart and kicking you in the face. There's no car chase scene. So it felt like it was something maybe I could make or maybe I could do. And I think I wanted to do a movie that I could, do. And I think that was part of my kind of like love of horror. I also like the rules and, how it all changes, like the subtleties of changing the rules slightly. Scream came out when I was in high school, and that was definitely forever like my favorite when that came out.
Different variations of the rules, like how you have your final girl and then your alt final girl, your switcheroo twist, if you will.
Yeah.
I don't know if I may have skipped it in the intro, but so the way we're going to break down this interview, it's going to go in basically 4 parts. The first 3 are going to talk about your childhood, then your teenage years, then your adult years, and then the last quarter will be a wrap up where we talk about any common themes that have cropped up multiple times. So when you
I've listened to the podcast too, but I'm going to be honest with you guys. I'm 44. I have like, oh, nice. It's 1980s. But, I have like 8 memories probably from, from 10 below, like when I was really a kid. Probably 5 of them are Halloween. I can't remember a bunch of movies. I know I watched Ghostbusters. My parents were pretty protective when I was like a little kid. I don't have anything super cool. I mean, if you want to go like real life stuff, which I know some people do, there was actually, I grew up in Detroit, and there was actually like a rash of kidnappings, like a black phone amount, if I'm being like, to be clear, like it was just like
in Detroit in the 80s.
I know, it's weird. You feel like RoboCop would have protected us, but yeah, it was
too busy
rough.
Shooting people's dicks off.
Sorry, my headphone disconnected there for a second. But we did have a kidnapper, and when I was walking home from school, it was me and Tom, and then this girl that lived near Tom, named April, and she was like 2 years younger than us or something like that. And she always kind of followed us around because girls icky, or something like that. It was the 80s. Please forgive me. I was like 10 walking home from school, and she actually almost got kidnapped.
Oh shit.
The van, like I saw the kidnap van, they came at her, and they tried to get her to come in at first. And then she kind of ran to us. I remember turning around and seeing her run towards us. And then we saw some people kind of get out of the van, then see there was like 3 kids, and we all started running, and they just thought better of it and just kept going. But yeah,
that's crazy.
So there are 3 kids in the van?
No, sorry. Maybe I'm mistelling the story. Me and Tom were walking home. April's the 3rd kid. She was like, let's say she was like a quarter of a block away, like 4 houses.
I followed that. I just thought you were saying their kids got out of the van too.
Yeah, that's what's weird. Yes, they were kidnappers. I wanted to be clear. They were kidnappers. Yes, kidnappers.
I don't want to get all back in my day about it, but like it's so crazy to think about stuff like that because that is the archetypal kidnapper. Like I assume there were no windows on the van either, and
There was the white van, absolutely. It was a little more gray. It felt like the A-Team van if they didn't paint it, if that makes sense. But
your typical econo van. But yeah, that is just like the archetypal literal kidnapper, and it would just happen just like that. And for you to see that in person is just it's wild.
Yeah, I actually had it happen twice because I wasn't the same person, but one of the most horrifying moments of my entire like kid life, which I didn't know if this is, there's horror and then there's horrors. If that makes sense, is a little bit more horrors, like real life horror.
Yeah, no, that's part of the question here. That's part of our process. We do ask about real life experiences.
So I was pedaling my bike, right? Mm-hmm. And I just like kind of won a bike. I don't even understand how I won it, but like it was at a parade, and I guess I somehow won the parade and won a bike is what my mom said. I don't get it. Now that I tell the story, I'm like, I need to know how that happened. But so I won, and I was riding it at the end of my block, right? And I started feeling that this like guy was kind of like something was weird, and then on the wrong side of the street, this car was parked, this big van, and there was a guy with like a red mustache, like a thick red mustache, and red hair turning, and he just was looking at me. And I was riding my bike like literally towards him, right? And I kept going like, I shouldn't be scared, but like it was so weird because he didn't do anything but look at me, if that makes sense. And he was parked. Yeah, he was parked on the wrong side of the street on I don't want to say like, it's not busy, but like, reasonable amount of like there'd be a car like every half a minute or something like that. And it's like, why was he parked there? He was parked at the stop sign. And I really got the impression that he was waiting for me. And he never stopped looking at me the whole time. And I got to like 3 houses away or something like that, like where it was really close enough to like see his eyes, see everything. And something was really wrong. It wasn't quite as visceral as like guys getting out of the van and being clear that they were going to kidnap me. But like that face haunts me forever. It is the reason that I just am not into red-headed mustached men. That I'm straight. Those are the only 2 major reasons. But so I turned my bike around, just went for it. Like rode about as fast as I possibly could. But yeah, those are 2. I mean, I grew up around Detroit, so there's like 7 murders on my block. There's a lot of stuff like that.
Does your aversion to ginger mustached men expand to Game of Thrones? Like, are you just not a fan of Tormund?
Yeah. It's
that guy's so cool though.
Yeah, it's tough. It is tough. Like he ruined that sect of person for me. I'm not saying they're all like that either, but I
blame the creepy guy who was staring at you totally. Because
Now, if they have the full beard like in Game of Thrones, I'm obviously more forgiving. But yeah, if you ever have like a thick handlebar styled mustache,
like just the mustache, God, that's even creepier.
It is creepy, right? Like to have a really red mustache is very uncommon.
It is.
He forever will creep me out. Like I had nightmares about him like probably in the last 2 weeks.
Wow.
Well, flipping that question around, was there ever a time in your childhood when you felt exceptionally calm or safe or at bliss?
Oh, I really thought you were going to be like, flipping that question around, have you ever kidnapped anybody?
You could ask that as well.
And legally, I can't answer that currently. There's some legal tape we need to get through.
Litigation, yes.
Some litigation. Officially, no, is the statement I'm going with. Unless there's a plea bargain. So, for me, everything's very like, I think I look at the world a little differently, and I think a lot of people do. I'd rather be, happy and calm and not overthink things. And even if I get really screwed 3 or 4 times, I'm the kind of guy who would rather, not worry about people stealing from him and occasionally get stolen from than live my whole life potentially going to be a victim. So I walk around pretty much anywhere and I'm never very worried. I travel a lot. I've been to some places a few times where like, maybe I shouldn't have done this. But so the answer is, did I ever feel calm and safe? Yeah, most of the time. I had 2 loving parents. I had a great childhood. I was born with a cleft palate. That wasn't the best. I talked like Urkel during like the time of Urkel. But other than that, I always felt pretty safe, pretty calm. It was a pretty good life.
Okay.
But I think that's based on perspective too, right?
Yeah. Did you have anybody else in your family who were fans of horror?
No, that is really true. I don't have a big family, to be fair, but like I have never seen my dad watch a horror movie. I don't think he watched a single horror movie in the whole time I knew him. And then I've never seen my mom watch one unless she took me to one. Like she took me to Scream 2. She had to for my birthday because we weren't old enough to get in. And I wasn't cool with like fake ID and stuff. So she was always a good sport about it. But, my mom does a thing where like, God, we could be watching like almost anything. I'm trying to think like what's the most, like we could be watching like Halloween Town, and during like a spooky part of it, she's like, "Is this X-rated?" And I'm like, "No, Mom, it's just a guy in a mask. Nobody's even died." Like the tamest thing ever. And she would always turn to me like, "Should you be watching this?" I'm like, "Yes, it's fine." And so,
did you have a favorite costume for Halloween when you were a kid?
Ooh, that's a good one. I always remember Wizard. I liked having the big full beard. I remember dyeing it myself and stuff. And it just felt like the Wizard could do a lot of things. I didn't like dressing up as like a particular person. Like I was never like, I want to be Captain America. I wanted to be like my own thing, if that makes sense.
That makes sense.
I think Wizard was like the first time, but we had the old school awesome ones that they started remaking with like, who do you want to be? And it'd be like the Incredible Hulk, and it would be like the plastic mask in a box of the Incredible Hulk. And then my favorite part about those always forever is the fact that they're like, well, what does the Incredible Hulk wear? They're like, well, he wears a T-shirt of him as the Incredible Hulk. And that is true for all of those costumes. Like the Incredible Hulk is not green. He is green, but like he's wearing a T-shirt.
Well, his face is green. The rest of his body is normal, and his face is green.
Yeah.
And his outfit is, I am the Incredible Hulk on a T-shirt.
Yes. Which is so weird to wear that kind of weird plastic costume when you think about it. When it easily could have been his skin. Instead, they're wearing a weird fake plastic version of the thing that you could have just worn yourself. You could have bought your kid an Incredible Hulk shirt. It would have been the same net result.
This has come up on the podcast before, and I think what we had determined was that it was probably like that because of how many kids would probably take the mask off while they're running around. And then you run up to somebody's door and you're like, well, what is this kid? And this way, at least you have the shirt. So they go, oh, you're the Hulk. Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, that is a huge difference. Like, every generation complains about the last generation being soft. I know my dad felt the same way when I said, this plastic's cutting into my eyes.
Yeah, that's another feature of those masks that comes up often. And also the slit for the mouth.
Oh, yes. The embarrassing slit for the mouth. Yes.
And how you just can't help but stick your tongue through it and then
Yes. Like you're like literally getting cut and then you want to get cut again. Like, oh my God, for some reason. Because every generation has to say like, oh, the last generation's soft. My dad would be like, in my day, if you wanted a scar, we cut the kid's face. He'd be something like, like if you wanted to have blood on you, you just bled and we saved it. Something like that. Like, like the masks were real. If you saw a vampire, they were a real vampire. You have these sissy masks, that would be kind of it. So,
least favorite costume?
Those masks. Those are the worst.
I didn't know if those were pointless. Least favorite.
Oh my God, yes. I mean, you have fond memories of stuff, but like in reality, it's terrible.
Yeah.
Looking back on it, you're like, what the hell? Like walking home from school, I have such fond memories. But I also just told you a situation where I almost got kidnapped.
Right.
Like there's literally guys in vans taking kids from my block. And I'm like, but it was fun because I did not.
Counterpoint, it does also sound very iconic and basically like your memory was directed by Steven Spielberg.
Exactly. Or John Carpenter. Exactly. Yeah, probably more of the Carpenter in that one. But yeah, they should have at least come out with like cool Halloween masks. I think that's really insensitive of them to not like to be wearing. They're like the one guy was just wearing like a ski mask or something like that. Mm-hmm. He should have worn a fun mask, like a clown or something.
Yeah, right. So the next two questions come as a pair. We'll start with the negative one so we can end on the positive one. Do you remember the first person you hurt?
The first person I hurt, like physically
or emotionally?
Yeah, I can. So I used to get bullied a lot, which is the statement that 100% of people say from the 80s. And but I did legitimately, cleft palate. I talked like this. I was pretty big target there, and I remember, my dad was like, you gotta stand up for yourself. And he was a great guy. I'm kind of playing some jokes, but he was pretty down to earth and a great guy. But, he encouraged me, like, it was stand up for yourself. Like bullies usually don't do this. So I did one day, and understand this is like fourth grade, third grade kind of stuff. So my bully was like this huge girl named Pam. She's in the same grade, but like she had 50, 70 pounds on me. She was double my size, probably like a foot taller than me. And one day I just got sick of her bullying me. And I just turned around when she was like flicking my ears or something like that. And I just like pushed her to the ground in the playground, which got like pretty big cheers and stuff. People, they didn't like her. So I pushed her to the ground. And then the next day walking home from school, I get hit in the head with a rock.
Ooh,
and
escalated quickly.
Yeah, and it was her brother, and I thought that was a really interesting lesson that I've taken with me a lot, where it's just like, you stand up for yourself and you escalate this stuff, and it doesn't just go away. It's a lot of times a person who that old Irish adage, which is never get in a fight with an ugly man, they have less to lose. I always felt like I had a lot to lose, Pam and her family, no disrespect intended, didn't have as much to lose. She wasn't like on a roll. She wasn't really potentially going anywhere and stuff like that. So, I stood up for her, and now I had to stand up to her brother. Now I had to stand up to her, all her kinfolk, all her things. And they didn't care if they got expelled or suspended or anything like that.
Was this family the O'Doyles?
Basically. I mean, they were like a family that didn't care. Like, I remember that, like, when I was older, I met their parents. I'm like, oh my God.
It all makes sense.
I don't need to bully them. I don't need to fight back.
There's that too.
Yes, I don't need to they go home and they go home and they're getting it enough, man. Like, they have bad lives. So, they're putting that on me, I guess, which, isn't the right call on their part either. I'm not sure, even to this day, I think about that. I'm not sure what the real lesson is,
People suck.
Pink Floyd lyric.
People suck. When I think about it like that, yeah, but the lesson was people suck. What am I doing?
Some people suck.
Yes, young/old. Just only middle-aged people are fine.
Yeah.
People in my exact age range.
So, do you remember the first person you helped?
Not that I can think. I do have a fun one from if we're kind of in the childhood range. So we were in Europe, which my grandma had saved up like her whole life, take a family trip to Europe. Didn't invite my dad, which I now think is kind of funny. And my uncle was getting pickpocketed. So we were in Greece, and what they do is there will be like a swarm of like 5-10 children. Mm-hmm. And they'll surround you, and they'll show you something in the front, and then they'll run around you. And my uncle was like trying to spin because that's what he was told, but he still kept his wallet in the back pocket. And I had been climbing on some rocks near him. And I actually, honest to God, probably the only cool moment of my entire life, I jumped down like into the pile of kids. Batman. Like Batman, and they ran away.
Land?
Oh yeah, I absolutely I used to, even when it was hot out, I used to wear like a little bit of a longer coat that I used to pretend was like Gambit or something like that. And I remember jumping down, and I know it didn't look as cool as I imagined it did in my head, but in my head I was absolutely Batman. I
Awesome.
probably did not stick the landing. I probably tripped or something. I don't remember.
Yeah.
But in my head, I absolutely stuck the landing. But the kids did run away, and my uncle did keep his wallet. So,
Mission accomplished.
yeah, that was, yeah.
Cool. It's a unique story, definitely. So one of the other things that some of our guests have reported is that there's like a dividing line where prior to this dividing line, horror scared them, and then after the dividing line, horror was enjoyable to them. Was there like a dividing line like that for you, or was it always enjoyable?
I don't like, and I've heard different guests you've had say this. I don't have a dividing line.
Okay.
Partly it's probably I don't have quite the memory as some of your guests do. My memory is all in just a few random stories pieced together. Like from that whole European trip, I have like 2 memories. You know, like I just don't have probably the stellar lockbox of memory some other people have. Horror always has scared me. Horror scares me still. The difference is I believe very strongly that part of life is to try to get over what you're scared of. Is to try to accomplish this. I honest to God, I've said this for just ever, but I was in Japan with my friend Emily, and we were going on this roller coaster that she knew I was absolutely terrified of. And we were like really up in the air. She started kind of casually talking to me, and I'm like, I can't talk right now. And then she turned to me and she said, "You are the bravest scared man I've ever met." Because it's absolutely my idea to come to this event. It was absolutely my thing to do this. But I'm still scared. I'm scared of heights. I go on roller coasters. I'm very claustrophobic. I've been to the catacombs in Paris. I do anything that I'm scared of for the most part. I do. I think the only thing that I really, really have put a foot down is I am just not going spelunking. I don't care. I'm just never doing it. I'm fine. I can, if I get to a point, there's a great Mel Brooks movie called Defending Your Life where they put basically, they say that, it's about living your life fully, and that's really the point of life. And I always kind of took that. I know it's technically just a movie and in no way a religion, but I always felt like, the idea that you're supposed to remove barriers of fear and you're supposed to live your life to the absolute fullest. That's what I've always tried to accomplish. So, I literally was, I get scared all the time. Okay. Scared of the dark, scared of everything, but I just keep pressing forward and eventually get more and more. But it's fun still. It's fun to be scared. You feel alive, right?
Yeah. Definitely an adrenaline rush.
Yeah.
I've always liked the phrase, courage is not the absence of fear, it is action in the face of it.
Exactly.
Yeah. Cool. So, all right, moving into teenage years, you had mentioned working at this, I wanted to call it Blockbuster, but I don't even know if it was a Blockbuster, but
it was
an actual Blockbuster. Yeah, I worked in actual Blockbuster. Woot woot.
All right. So, any particular movies stand out to you from those years that really impacted you?
So I've always, I used to be obsessed with Trauma. So I saw a lot of the Trauma movies and stuff like that. Love Lloyd Kaufman. He is nothing short of an absolute hero. His books are the absolute best. So like things like Sergeant Kabuki Man, NYPD, or Tromeo and Juliet. Those were very, very big for me. Ghostbusters was a big thing for me. I kind of felt like I saw that later in life. As far as like what particular movie stood out to me, the problem I hate is some of my answers are fairly generic, which is good and bad. I'd love to like really reference these old ones, but Kevin Williamson stuff, the Scream really changed a lot for me because it started allowing. It felt like we could start being a little bit more open and honest about the meta of horror, and I also don't know, like, despite it started encouraging me to read all that stuff and to learn about it a different way. Because I think I had seen a lot of horror at the time, but I didn't really understand a lot of horror, if that makes sense. I didn't like the formula, like when he pointed out, I'm like, the formula, but like, then I started reading books. I don't know how old I am at this point in time, 14, 15. And I remember I actually saw Scream when it came out in theaters. So I was probably 15. And that's when there's more of a turning point. And it's also when my mom and dad were more cool with me just like watching whatever. I think my dad always was, but yeah, I think that movie probably did the most for me. But I understand it's a huge blockbuster and it's much more sexy to be like, some kind of very, very obscure, like Henry Portrait of a Serial Killer or something like that, which I do think is amazing. But
yeah,
that one did a lot for me.
Well, you mentioned Sergeant Kabuki Man, which doesn't come up very often.
No, it doesn't.
Anything particular stand out to you?
It's just so damn wacky, man. Like, like it's so wacky. And, at the time, like nowadays we have a surplus of wacky. We have wacky everywhere. Do you remember when politicians used to be mind-numbingly boring?
Yes.
And
I miss it.
Yes, the reason that we didn't used to talk about politics and religion at the table was a couple-fold. One, it was a really boring conversation. That was one of them. Like they were worried about arguments, but in reality, people would often be like, well, I respect you and understand your religion, and it's not for me, but that's okay. And well, you're a Republican and I'm a Democrat, those are okay. And I understand you have different viewpoints that don't agree. It was boring. Politicians would quite literally say almost nothing. They'd be like, but now everything's wacky. Like from the White House to TikTok, there's a surplus of wacky. But back then, wacky was much rarer. Sergeant Kabuki Man, a man who's a detective who has the power to shift into a Kabuki Man with superpowers. That's amazing. All those trauma things. It made me feel like I had the ability to potentially do this. And I felt like they were the closest to seeing like who I really was, which was a person that didn't take things all that seriously. And even the more contrived ones that they kind of tried to push out on us that had wacky, they weren't truly wacky. They were like universal wacky. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know if that makes sense. They were edited wacky. Yeah.
Like safe wacky or sterilized wacky.
Sterilized wacky. There's definitely somebody in a room. There is an amazing book called The Power of Moments I reference a lot by Dan and Chip Heath. And they talk about the sterilization of moments, essentially. And the idea that, when you have something that's going to be truly, truly memorable, like if I mention, like, let's say the popsicle hotline at the Magic Castle. Are you familiar with that?
No.
So Popsicle Hotline, they built this because they didn't have enough money to renovate the Magic Castle Hotel. It's very, very like 70s in there, like real 70s. And they had hard reviews. So instead of doing like normal things, they decided to do like really, truly unique, wacky, memorable things. And they created a Popsicle Hotline. It's right by the pool. It is a red phone, right? And you pick it up. And they say, hello, Popsicle Hotline, in like an accent. And they're like, what flavor would you like today, sir? And you just say what flavor, and then they bring it out to you on a silver tray with white gloves.
What?
Yes, that's real, right? It's awesome. It's memorable. So at the end of the day, do you remember that, like which do you remember? The story about the Popsicle Hotline or the story about the decor was a little dated? You remember the Popsicle Hotline, but when you think about group stuff, right? When you get a big group of people, what does the Popsicle Hotline become, right? The Popsicle Hotline, they talk about it. They're like, well, that seems good, but why don't we make a compromise? And, instead of a hotline, it's like a vending machine that's free popsicles. And it can still be red, like the red is a part of it, because how like if you're ever in a corporate environment, they'll stick with things in it like that don't make sense. It still can be red. And then you pull it out and you get a popsicle.
It's the same thing.
Yeah, it's the same thing. And then another guy's like, well, why don't we just charge cost popsicles? And then they put in a vending machine that has 25-cent popsicles at thing. And you're like, what the hell is this? Why do I have this? And it doesn't it's sterilized weird. It's not a moment anymore. It's
right.
A corporatized moment. And Sergeant Kabuki Man is not corporatized at all. It's barely even coherent.
Nothing Trauma is corporatized at all. That's for sure.
No, that's the best part. And who do we have now from that? James Gunn.
Yep.
All right. So wackiness definitely defines Trauma. What about Ghostbusters?
What's Ghostbusters?
Yeah, I mean, did you like Ghostbusters because it was wacky, or was there some other element about it that you liked?
I think Kevin Smith has described this best, is Bill Murray is the single only human who can be a live-action Bugs Bunny.
Yeah.
There's never a point with Bill Murray where you're like, wow, this guy, like, you feel like he is part of the audience the whole time. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And he can do his whole thing. He can do tongue in cheek and do just whatever. And
he's being silly, but he knows he's being silly. Yeah.
Yes, but not silly enough. And can you tell me who the next Bill Murray is? Like, who's even like Bill Murray? Like, it's really tough.
I might get some hate for this, but Ryan Reynolds, kind of?
A little bit. Like, he's different, though. Like, I make an argument that nobody's
really cynical.
Yeah, nobody's really like Ryan Reynolds either, to be honest.
Yeah, Bill Murray is like an amalgamation of Ryan Reynolds and Stephen Wright.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. He's like a human cartoon. I don't know. Like, I dug that. But yeah, the key of Ghostbusters, again, and I think the key as I'm talking this out, is it's also obtainable. That's what I was looking for, because I was not going to win any races. When I was born, they told me I wouldn't even be able to. Well, they told my parents that he wouldn't even be able to talk on the phone. Like, this was not going to, this would be something where if we work really hard.
And here you are on a podcast.
Absolutely. But yeah, they gave her a 20-year plan where they thought they might, with multiple surgeries, might be able to get me to a point where people could understand me if they read my lips while I'm talking. Okay.
Well,
optimistic.
We've really come a long way in terms of medical advancements. That's good.
Yeah.
You mentioned obtainable earlier, and I wanted to ask you about that too. So, it seemed like you wanted to be a filmmaker, but it wasn't clear kind of like when that came to mind. I was guessing that was more of a teenage thing than a childhood thing.
No, I started making movies with my friends. God, probably like 11 years old or something like that. Friend Tom's dad, I was like the poorest kid in the neighborhood, and he was like one of the richer ones, and he had a high 8 recorder. I think his dad just bought it kind of on a lark. We almost never ran into a family movie that he ever did. I think he probably recorded 10 minutes on it. And we probably recorded 100.
He had some that you didn't know about, and that's probably a good thing.
Oh, God, no. That's possible. That is possible, I suppose. Why else did you have the recorder?
Your stuff was more important.
He never even attempted to use it for real. Man, your idea is sounding more and more plausible, actually. That's bad. That's terrible. Life ruined.
You'll have to ask Tom about that later.
Absolutely. You hear that, Tom Fitzstevens? I'll force you to listen to this podcast with me on it, where we talk about your dad. He's still alive, though. I think he's oh, God.
Careful what you find.
Oh, no. Like, I feel like we've been through all the tapes, but he could have like a hidden safe or something. Oh, no.
Sorry.
So yeah, I wanted to do it from a young age. That was always my goal. I always just wanted to make movies, have fun with my friends. But yeah, I think I wanted to do it pretty early on. I don't know the exact moment, but it also felt like, actually, you know what? I can tell you the exact moment I got into theater if you want to hear it. Like when I decided. So, 4th grade, and I was with a speech therapist. And she was talking, I was in the room, but she was talking to my parents like I wasn't in the room. Remember how that used to feel? They still do that. And she said to my parents, she's like, what Scott has done is absolutely amazing. It's the equivalent of running like a man with a club foot running in the Olympics.
And she's like, thanks.
Yeah, and she's like, oh, that's not a bad thing. I mean, it's true. Like, I went like to be nowadays. I feel like we have to be positive no matter what. Like, if you're like 4'1", they're like, you could be center in the NBA. We don't know, and like you could maybe, but I don't think you're going to play center at least. But the big thing is, it's realistic. She was being realistic. But then she said, I honestly at this point in time feel like Scott could do just about anything. And then she laughed and she's like, I mean, not like acting or public speaking or something.
Jesus.
And that was the time where I'm like, what, screw you. And I'm going to do this for a living, which is weird because I was much better at math. I probably should not be doing this for a living. I would have crushed in like a math or tax accountant or something like that. Yeah, I actually like math, but I threw up the first time I went on stage. I definitely never threw up the first time I did math.
It's a good point. It's a valid point. No, I like that whole exchange though, because it seems
the
like
right kind of math. Sorry.
Like at first it sounds like your teacher is going to be like, you can do anything if you put your mind to it. But then she follows it up with that,
But not
except
that.
these things.
Yeah,
These specific things, and that, but you turn it around, and that was almost your inspiration or catalyst for. You're like, "Fuck you, I'll do it."
Yeah, exactly. Never underestimate spite, everyone. Like,
Right.
spite is very big. Like, if spite's not you, like, I believe, like, potato chips were invented with spite, right? Customer kept sending. He wanted thin potatoes. Thin baked potatoes. And this
thin potatoes.
Yeah. And he's like, I'll show you thin potatoes. Yes. And he like literally spent hours the day before cutting thin potatoes because he hated this regular customer so much. Baked them and invented the potato chip. Spite. There's a million spite things, if somebody's listening out there, maybe you're spiteful about cancer, go solve that. That'd be dope. You spite for good. Show us you can't. I'll tell you, you can't cure cancer, and you go cure cancer.
Right. Yes.
Good old reverse psychology.
Exactly.
You can't do it. I bet you can't do anything.
Do you?
So, did you participate in Halloween as a teen?
I actually still go trick or treating. And I'm not lying. I've never missed. I missed trick or treating one time only as a kid because I had the flu, and through kicking and screaming,
again, spite. Like, never miss it again.
That's fair. I'm a big well of spite. And I'm like, I'm never missing this. I think it's too fun. Do I do a bunch of houses? Do I rob a bunch of candy? No, but I'll still go. I went with my fiance over here in New Orleans last Halloween.
Okay.
I had a few
Halloween in New Orleans. That sounds awesome.
Oh, it is awesome. It's one of the reasons I moved here. Literally, it's so awesome here for Halloween.
We'll get to that in a minute. But for the teenage section, favorite costume during your teenage years?
I found this gold mask that's kind of haunting. It's just very plain. It's kind of like a drama mask in a way, but it's so expressionless. Yeah, so I became a guy called Golden Child, and later we filmed a horror movie about it. But I literally went thrifting and found all gold things, which you can find a lot easier in Detroit than a lot of other places. I found all this like gold pants, gold everything, and became Golden Boy, who was a serial killer.
Okay.
So I had a top hat, which now that I look back, I'm like, it's way scarier without the sparkly top hat. I don't know why I had the top hat, but that's my favorite costume. I still have that mask. It's somewhere at headquarters displayed.
Okay.
Nice.
A
least favorite costume from your teenage years?
I dressed up as Gold Dust once for WWE.
You're gold thing, don't you?
Apparently I did. I think at that time I was like trying to go for something. I used to wear a bunch of yellow T-shirts too.
Now you got to do a gold member next.
So we all dressed up for WrestleMania, right? And we watched it on my friend Andy, whose dad invented something called Gags and Gifts, which later became like Halloween USA, which later was bought by Spirit. And he had the most amount of money, was able to afford WrestleMania. We were all so jacked for WrestleMania, like so jacked. Attitude Era WrestleMania, Stone Cold, all this different stuff. And we all were like, come as your favorite wrestler. So I painted my face. And then his dad comes downstairs about midway through WrestleMania. And he's like, what the hell? And he looks at his couch, and I had gotten gold paint all over his couch and had not realized it. Nobody had mentioned this at all. And it was like so blatant. And he just kicked us all out. And then we had nowhere to go. It's not like we could pull it up on our phones. You had to pre-order WrestleMania. Mm-hmm. So because I dressed as Goldust, we just didn't see WrestleMania. Yeah, it was a huge heel there. I was the absolute worst. Like there was I couldn't have human being felt worse. That was the worst.
God damn it, Crampton.
Yes, that was absolutely what people said. Like that exact thing. You nailed it. That's absolutely. God damn it, Crampton. People said that all the time. I'd be like, God damn it, Crampton.
Yeah, you get yourself a goddamn. Yeah, I can relate. I get goddamn women's all the time.
Yeah, it sounds good off the tongue. People really like it.
Especially with a name ending in man. Like, God damn it, women. God damn it, Crampton.
Yeah. No, damn it, Becker. Yeah. Becker's more of like a Becker.
You're fired.
Yes, like a police chief in a movie.
There was a question I forgot to ask for the childhood section.
Sure.
I don't know if you all remember it, but we'll ask anyway. Never know. Did you have any? Yeah, exactly. Any recurring dreams or nightmares when you were kids?
Yes, I absolutely remember recurring dreams or nightmares. I did have a ton about that guy with the mustache, but my favorite one. I'll mention my current nightmare. I have. Yeah, I have favorite nightmares. I don't mind nightmares as much because when you wake up, you feel better. Have you ever had like a really amazing dream? Like I remember I once was like, I was like 17.
Okay,
I was dating Britney Spears. We were like riding in the car together.
Every 17-year-old's dream.
Yeah. She looked amazing. I was like,
it's not a nightmare.
Nowadays it would be a nightmare. If she was driving right now, that would be a nightmare.
I wonder, did she drive with the knives?
But this is like, this was her on the cover of Rolling Stone, Britney Spears. Like, oops, I did it again. Heyday, and I everything's come together in my life, and I felt so good. And I woke up worst. I was sad. I was just legitimately sad. But when you wake up from a nightmare, you feel great. I'm like, oh my God, my kitchen walls aren't bleeding. This is fantastic. I wear clothes to school.
Nightmare wishing, God damn it, I need to go back to sleep and get back into the dream.
Yes, exactly. So, anything that makes you excited to wake up the next day is always a win. But so a couple of them, the one that I have all the time still is just, I find out it's Halloween, but it's like 6:00 and I don't have a costume.
Oh, no.
And I'm always like trying to get the costume, but time keeps going and everybody's really slow and I can't quite get it to happen and I'm missing it and I'm going to have to wait a whole nother year and stuff like that. So that's mine. But the one that was very prevalent in my childhood is absolutely ridiculous. And what's ironic is I just got asked this for an immersive show called Mannequin that I did that was truly nightmare horror stuff. It was fantastic. Like 90-minute immersive show, one actor. And they replayed some of my nightmare, like they built it into it. My nightmare was I'm getting dropped off at swim class, right? And the swim teacher is a cartoon fox.
Like Robin Hood?
A little bit. More like Brer Rabbit cartoon fox.
Okay.
Like the real guy. And he's like doing like the licking his lips thing when I'm like getting dropped off. And I look and I'm like, Mom, this isn't swim class. He's going to eat us. And it's not even a pool. It's like a big, huge pot of soup. And there's like kids swimming in it and stuff like that. And you have to climb up it. You have to climb up a ladder to get in. It's like literally firewood under it, like a cartoon. And my mom's like,
Looney Tunes as a kid, didn't you?
Yeah, yes, I probably did. I watched too much Looney Tunes. But I'm like, Mom, and just the whole feeling so helpless that I have to convince this woman that this is obviously happening, and she's going to just leave me there. And she's just like, "Stop it, Scott! Stop being scared. Like, it's going to be okay. I'll pick you up in an hour." Yeah, and I'm like, I won't be alive in an hour. He's clearly going to eat us. Like a big,
okay. Have a good time, honey.
Yeah, the dreams always. Yeah, it was always like that. I never woke up with like. I always was still trying to convince her. I think that was the core of the nightmare. I was always still trying to convince her. But like the cartoon always got more and more absurd. Like as I pointed stuff out, if like I was dreaming longer, I'd be like, "Look, there's a guy chopping carrots. That's not part of a swimming pool."
Classic.
Anyway, long story short, my brother was eaten by that fox, and in real life, that's where the memory came from.
Yes,
and that's why we go fox hunting every year.
Yes, every year.
Because fuck foxes.
Oh, fuck cartoon foxes. Pick a lane, fox. You're either small or big.
All right. So going back to the teenager section. Yeah. So that's the 6 p.m. on Halloween, but no costume. Was that?
Oh yeah, that's it's always been that. It's always been like I'm missing something. If that like FOMO, but in real time. You know, right. But I never really mind those. I wake up a little stressed, but then I feel so much better the rest of the day. So
yeah, by comparison, it makes sense.
Exactly.
Because I'm not actually missing out on anything.
Yeah, I'm not. Yeah. It's not today's not Halloween. If I ever do wake up and it is 5 p.m. on Halloween, though, then it will be a problem.
It's like, shit, this is
no more Silver Linings Playbook for me.
Yes. So moving into adult years now that you've become an adult, any particular movies or books or stories really stand out to you as impressing you in your adult years?
Yeah. One of my favorites is The Last Broadcast. Have you ever seen that?
Yeah.
I saw it in a way that is just, God, I hate even spoiling it for people, but I have to explain how I saw it. It's so awesome. So I was at a garage sale and I was just like looking for things. And there was this like what looked like an almost homemade movie. I had never seen it, called like The Last Broadcast. And the box was like, had severe water damage. The tape of it was like, not really a VHS. It was a VHS tape, but like it was literally just had, masking tape on it written The Last Broadcast. And if you've ever watched the movie, it predates Blair Witch. It's a found footage horror movie. And I absolutely thought it was real the first time.
Yeah, I mean, it's very convincing.
Yeah, it was nuts. And that's the number one movie I show people usually when they want to see a horror movie that really, really gets to me. And I think what gets to me about that movie is he's like the main killer is just a normal human being who is very, very patient and is very, very obsessed. A little bit like You, if you've ever seen that in a way. It's like you're on the opposite side of You. Like you're in the Netflix show You, you're always with him, and he's the narrator and stuff. But like, imagine being the victim of that in a way. It's just really, really cool. I don't know. You guys said you've seen it or no?
I've seen it. It's been a while. All I remember is that there was like,
spoilers.
I don't want to spoil anything, but similar to One Cut of the Dead. It was like a layered twist near the end. Like you thought it was this, but now it's this, and now it's this.
Yeah, the twist is really strong and
dark.
Yes, like hyper dark, and like the fact, but not. There's no like real blood to it. There's nothing there.
No, it's all implied. Doesn't
anybody could make this movie too?
Yeah, it was very well. It was like 90s, wasn't it?
Oh yeah. It was. Oof, man.
Maybe early aughts. It was a while ago. I know that.
1998 is what it's saying it is. Yeah, 1998. And again, the people who did Blair Witch, watched this movie and then made the next step up from it. Also, do note that both are based on the Jersey Devil. On top of that, right?
Okay.
So a very, very different movie. The one thing about Blair Witch is Blair Witch only kind of has an ending, but Last Broadcast has like a usual suspects ending where you're
the ending is like the whole
shit.
third act or fourth act, really.
Yeah, but there's not like, it's like, okay, there's no like twist ending to Blair Witch. You're not like, they were always in a dream. Yeah.
So you mentioned the thing that scared you about this movie was that the killer was very patient and very obsessed. Is it just like a powerless feeling in the face of that, or what was it about that scared you?
I think you would lose, if that makes sense. Like, with Michael Myers, we've all probably had dreams where we're like being chased by like a Jason or Michael Myers or something like that, and you just keep running. From this particular person, there's no scenario. Like, the killer is so far above suspicion that he would get 98% of people. And the fact his choices on top, like, obviously I run the murder mystery company. I'm big into mysteries as well as horror. And I think they're very, very close cousins most of the time. And oftentimes they're, the best horror has a mystery element to it. See Scream or The Last Broadcast. But basically, he makes choices in there that would 100% remove him from any suspicion of being the killer. And you would never guess. I think a good equivalency would be like you meet Hercule Poirot, right? And he's there to solve a murder. And at the end of it,
he's the murderer.
Yeah, at the end of it, he shoots you and he kills you. And he says, "It's always been Hercule Poirot. I've killed them all and just had elaborate lies to pin it on other people." Like, it's so above suspicion. It would work. And honest to God, his tone, that the actor who does that tone. Like, I don't even know if I could actually meet him in real life. That would be one of the scariest. Like, the voice of that is.
You'd just be sitting there the whole time, like, "Are you plotting my murder right now? I don't know."
Yeah, I'm even looking.
It's already been planned.
Yep.
Even looking at this right now, I'm in Cast and Google. The guy, everybody else has updated things. He has the same picture.
Really?
From the movie only, and he has 3 different names. It says Jim Seward, then Jim Seward spelled differently, then David Beard, then David Lee. All of them spelled differently, and he is also the filmmaker of it in real life, and the main actor, and one of the actors.
That's scary.
And
this quote movie.
Yeah, again, like, I don't know. If you look up on Google, you have, like, literally says, "Is it based on a true story?" They have to be like, "No, it is fictive." Like, but I couldn't look it up on Google when I first saw it.
No,
I was just like, "Oh fuck, I found a murderer."
Right?
Did you pull a Charlie Sheen and call the FBI?
I did not. The FBI would listen to Charlie Sheen over me, but. Oh man, yeah. That's the movie though. Like that, and if you want a good movie that's just fun, I love Deadstream so much.
Yeah.
If you ever
say Deadstream?
Deadstream, yeah. That's just
like a fun on live stream. That's pretty good.
Yeah, okay. I think it's so fun. I got to see that at Fantastic Fest, and yeah, or did I see it over? Either way, I met them at Fantastic Fest. I ran into them, and that was cool. But I think it's the funniest. I think it's the funniest low budget horror.
Anything else about it that you like, or is it just that it's fun?
I think that honestly, like, it has a good mystery. It has a good twist. It has a twist above suspicion. I think at first, at least, it gives hints. And I love the one problem with murder mysteries is you assume there's a mystery element to them. So you go in with that idea that you're playing a game. But when you watch like a I See Dead People styled movie, you don't. You're not looking for it. And that way the twist can be more satisfying. And in that way horror is a little better. So I love that they do a good twist. But what makes it so special, I think, is the loving craftsmanship of these thousands of comments that you see throughout the film, because he's basically streaming it and all these different people commenting in, obviously what I assume is in post, but like, it's all so real. It's all so great. The fact that he finds stuff out by people being like, "Hey, Sean, you gotta." Hey, Sean, we just translated what she said to you, and it's this. Those kind of things I think are so fun, and I honestly think he should be doing so much more, and it's such a crime. I gotta look up what his name is, but basically he should be doing a bit more. I like, he's so talented, he's so funny. He does movies, just him and his wife, and I think that's just awesome. His name's Joseph Winter. He's a good follow on social media if anybody wants to. And he plays Sean Rudy, and his wife, Melissa Winter, something Winter.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the next two questions are going to be about your entire life, and could be any genre, not just horror. Do you remember, or do you know what movie you've watched more times than any other?
Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory.
That one on deck.
Okay.
Yeah. What do you like about it?
I think it's the most imaginative movie. It pulled just essentially no punches. Like, do you know how long it took them to write? I wrote my thesis on this, by the way, so I know more than anybody should about Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. How long did it take them to write all of the songs, with the exception of Cheer Up Charlie, in Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory?
75 years.
They did it in one weekend in a hotel room.
Shut the fuck! Wow.
Yes, every single one of those songs was written. They had under 72 hours, start to finish, to write every song in that movie. And the only reason they didn't write "Cheer Up, Charlie" is, and this is real, they didn't check if the actor playing Charlie could sing. So
you just assume everyone can sing. I mean, you can sing, right?
Yeah, they just assumed that Peter Ostrom could sing. He could not at all. That's also why Grandpa Joe jumps out of bed, for all those amazing Reddit Grandpa Joe haters. That is actually why, because they were on set. They're like, it's his song. We have it all. They started hearing him sing, and you can even hear him singing that song. He's awful. I love him. He's a great guy. I've met a few times, but he's amazing. But like, he will tell you, that man cannot sing a lick. He's like,
Met him a few times too. You are a fan. Have you met Gene Wilder?
No, I didn't meet him before he passed, unfortunately.
Oh, that's right.
He was very, very hard to meet, though. He did.
Yeah, I imagine. I mean, he's made so many films.
He did. He only had two different ways you could meet him. One, you could hang out in the town that he lived in and hope to run into him.
You want to be that guy.
He was not an ideal. And then the only other one was to meet him was he ran a singular charitable film festival once per year, I think, in his town. And he would sign a few things there. But his autograph, his everything is very challenging to get.
But forgot Gene Wilder passed.
Yeah. Yeah, it always makes you sad. There's a good documentary about him, too.
Well, it seemed like the main thing that you liked about it was the imagination, which aligns up with some of the other things that you've said. So moving back to horror for a minute, do you see any common threads about what kind of horror you like? Cannibalism, occult, metaphysical?
Yeah, absolutely. So first and foremost, most of the time I'll watch almost any horror. I absolutely will be a sucker for the hell camp, or the ones that are like, there's teenagers, they're almost like the Stranger Things thing. Like if it's like teenagers trying to fight something, I don't know why that's so appealing. But it always is. I never get tired of that. Yeah, I never get tired of that. I can literally see just almost the same take on it that they've done 100 times and be like somewhat entertained. But when it goes to my favorites, there's always a big twist. There's always a mystery element to it. There's always a level of really high stakes, and the villain is not who we think the villain is. That's always one of my most important things, I think, in horror, is that.
The Scooby-Doo moment.
Yeah.
So this would probably be where we give a bit of a summary, and then we could talk about that and potentially what that means to you. Really, there's sort of kind of 2 things that I'm seeing, maybe 3, but some of them kind of maybe could like fall under some of the other things. Like, for example, there are a couple things that you have talked about that could relate to spite. There's also a couple things that you have said that could relate to a fear of being unheard. Both of those, I think, fall under getting over what you're afraid of, or fighting and for. I don't want to say fighting for what you believe in, but like, you mentioned maybe first thing early in life having a cleft palate and, fighting over, what the speech therapist had told you about.
Defiance, maybe?
Defiance.
I don't want to say defiance is, I mean, there might be an element of that, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but, it just seemed more like what you were saying about removing these barriers of fear and living your life to the fullest. I didn't necessarily get defiance out of that, although maybe there is. I mean, what do you think?
I think you would definitely, like, one thing that's very true. Imagine just for a moment you're younger and you talk exactly like this.
Right.
Okay. One common thread is you can say things, but people take you very seriously.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's where some of the nightmares stem. It's not about being heard, it's being believed and taken seriously. Right. Mm-hmm. Because I mean, what was Stevan Urkel? What was Urkel, right? Yeah. He was a cartoon character on screen. That voice is a cartoon, and the one thing that's true about cartoons, you don't take them very seriously.
Right. Mm-hmm. Right, but shit, not spite. What was the other word that we just said? Not
defiance.
Defiance. Thank you. Yeah. In the defiance part of it, do you think that's a part of it, or is it more about just the getting over the barriers?
Yeah, I mean, I think that like I've always used the term spite for that story in 4th grade, right? Like I've always thought of that as a.
I'm not saying that wasn't. I'm just saying, was that a key element of that element of that moment, or is it a key element of how you feel overall?
It's not an element I feel now. Like I don't have really much spite in my heart. But to be fair, people aren't really trying to hold me down. I don't like being put in a place and told to do something. Like I'm not sure a lot of people like that. I understand it's part of life as well, but like I've always had a harder time with that, I think, than a lot of people. I hated school for that. I was so horrifyingly bored in school most of the time. I think, I don't know. I don't have any spite in my heart anymore. Now I'm just trying to do as much as I can with the time that I have. I think one of those powerful quotes ever is from Charlie Chaplin that says, "My only true enemy is time."
Yeah. Mm. I mean, that's true for all of us. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the other concept. Right. The other thing that kind of popped out to me was, being wacky or imaginative. And I think that maybe also falls under this in a way that kind of thing is crossing boundaries, which is also lining up with, crossing the boundaries of things that you were told you couldn't do. Mm-hmm. So, maybe there's some commonality there.
I think that's real. I absolutely think that's real. I think that, being told you can't do something is very, very powerful from a young age. Yeah. And you really want to, you want to overcome that. You want to do everything you can. I think that one reason I geared into the, trauma things is they felt more obtainable. Probably because my ambitions were lower in a sense, or I was trying to be realistic to them, I think. It didn't feel like they were going to give a kid like this the reins to, the Avengers movies or something. Right. Not that they were around during that time, but you get what I'm saying, right? Like, yes. But those things, the things made by the radicals of the world, the things made by those people who are like, no, I'm putting my life savings into Sergeant Kabuki Man. Just imagine having that conversation with your wife. I feel very strongly about Sergeant Kabuki Man.
Where are you going?
I mean, chances are, if she's your wife, she's already on board with that kind of thing anyway. So
probably.
Yeah. I mean, knowing that you've listened to a couple of our episodes, I didn't bother saying this, but the stuff with the twist and mystery and being obtainable, I saw that as those as being elements of the auteur side of things, which it's obviously important thing to you on the creative side, but it's more of a cerebral thing than an emotional thing.
Yeah, I mean, who doesn't love being truly surprised? I don't know, like in a way that's not terrifying.
So the natural follow-up here would be, why are these things important to you? I think that part is probably pretty clear in terms of, your background and history. And then the next question then would be, why horror? Can't you explore these things in other genres, or do you?
I think horror was always obtainable to me. I love the stakes of horror too. Horror just feels like, and also sometimes in life, it's not about like, I don't know what you set out to do, but like, who knows what's going to happen? Mm-hmm. And you take the paths and the doors that open to you. And, I was making a movie, which was not a horror movie. It was a comedy in college. And I was doing this like funny zombie scene. The owner of the place saw it and he said, "Hey, look, I'm trying to create a haunted house. Would you like to be involved?" And the next 8 years of my life, I was creating and running The Haunt, which was like a 35,000 person a year haunted house. It was wildly successful. And that opened up other doors, and the doors of horror, I think, kind of opened to me. And then when you look back, the lenses seem more obvious, like the blockbuster and stuff like that. Maybe I was better at it because of seeing so much horror movies and stuff like that. Or maybe, if he was running an ice cream shop, we would be talking about how my mom used to buy me ice cream. It's partly some of the opportunities that you get. I do think comedy movies are particularly challenging. I don't think that they work in the same way that they used to. I think it's very, very, very challenging now.
Yeah.
So you have to wrap it up into another thing. But yeah, it's tough. Why horror? I love feeling that way. I love the jumps. Don't you love jumping? Like to be like, just like that little adrenaline rush, the real thing, like when something actually gets you, God, that's the best.
Yes.
And chasing that is, why you watch all those movies, and they do get your attention. The stakes are always high, One thing I hate about horror is when they don't make the stakes very high. Like when somebody's chasing you and, hey, I totally get if you're doing like a scary movie or, real true horror comedy. But like, I hate when they feel like they can't die in a horror movie. That is the absolute worst.
So higher stakes, adrenaline rush.
Mm-hmm.
I guess that just makes me think of, the extent to which one might be crossing a boundary. Like if I'm only stepping over it, then what's the big deal? But if I'm, diving over it, then that's exciting.
It's true. That's very true. Bending things is only so interesting. The true genius of, the true power of moments is in something that truly stands out. That's not watered down.
Okay.
Well put.
Well, yeah, I think we got.
Also, when when's the last $200 million horror movie there was? I haven't. If you're unaware, I have that Shark Tank deal with Blumhouse, and the thing about Blumhouse thing is that he, Jason can just basically make about anything he wants because he's going to make it for $20 million, and it's going to make like $25 million at least, even if it doesn't turn out well. Or it'll make, but when you do everything, that allows freedom. When you make Snow White, you have to try to appease everybody, and thus you can do it in such a way that gets absolutely watered down to nothing. And occasionally you can do it in a way that's Avengers Endgame, where it's absolutely perfect. But I think Avengers Endgame is much rarer, and Snow White is much more common. Or a version of Snow White. Snow White is so bad, it's pretty uncommon, but...
Well, it's an interesting answer to that question that I don't believe we've heard before, as far as why horror, because it's a lot more easily accepted by the audience, by the specific horror audience. Because you're right, like in broader things like comedy or rom-com or action, it's a more widespread audience, I guess. So it's harder to please, whereas horror is a niche audience. If you have, your final girl and some blood and a killer and a mystery, it's good. It's at least acceptable.
And you can make it for less. So which means you can make it more special. You can make it what you want without it being watered down and marginalized or whatever you want to say. I'm not sure if marginalized is the right term, but.
Well, I was thinking what you might be saying is that the audience is more accepting of a particular movie not being in their niche, because I mean, like on our Discord server, we've got 40 channels for different subgenres, and that's, and you could probably even subdivide those further. So the community is very well aware that not everything is going to, ring their bells, shall we speak. Whereas, like you say, if you're making a $200 million movie, you're trying to ring everybody's bell. Like everybody's bell. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, there's just more acceptance, not of, not everybody's going to accept your movie, but they'll accept that it wasn't for them.
Yeah. And, they're more willing to watch it too, I think
part of that might have to do with, there's a lot of stuff that I don't want to say goes straight to video, but what I'm trying to say is there's a lot of stuff that you can see that you don't have to pay $15, $20.
Yeah, Shudder, for example. Shudder is amazing, right? There's so much stuff on there.
And so if you do pay a lower dollar amount, then it's not as much of I don't want to say a financial risk, but there's that too. But in terms of the person watching the movie, it's not as much of a investment of their time or their money. So if if it works for them, great. If not, on to the next thing.
Yeah, I also say that I know I might watch it for funsies, but if you told me, hey, the next Captain America movie is being made for $100,000. But if a $100,000 movie makes it into a film festival, like a horror movie film festival, like Fantastic Fest, I'm like, wow, I should watch that because it must be pretty
it's amazing how much of a difference it is, because you're right. That's not a micro budget on a horror movie.
Film
festival horror movie anyway.
Well, yeah, but honestly, even when those have the smaller budgets and stuff like that, you the smaller the budget and it makes it, the more likely you are to be like, this must be a fantastic horror movie, right? Like Commons and Cornfield, they'll make a festival. It's great, by the way. I loved it, but it will make a festival because it has $20 million. But if you make it with 1/100th or 1/1000th of a budget and you make it into a horror festival, you must have done something really awesome.
Yes. Yeah, and if you're making $100,000 Captain America movie, the people that are going to watch that are going to be people who are intentionally looking for something that's so bad it's good.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Unless I literally hear Chris Evans does movie for $5, and
maybe somebody has some dirt on him.
Yeah, he does it for $5, and it's just Captain America doing some kind of mediocre stuff, and then a mid fist fight at the end. I'd probably watch that, but it would have to be what is this about? That shield's not banging off of anything.
Why is it made of cardboard?
Yeah,
let's be the paparazzi now. Yeah. Chris, why did you decide to do such a low budget film? Don't worry about
it.
Mind your business.
You came out of retirement to do $100,000 Captain America movie for free.
This is for charity.
Well, I think we got a pretty good summary for what you get out of horror and what you like about the genre. Before we wrap up, do you? Does I? Yeah. Did you have anything maybe that you thought of earlier in the call that you didn't get a chance to say?
I love this. I love the community of horror so much. I think that is one of the most if you're not part of it, if it's not your bag or whatever, I think that there's not an understanding of how incredibly supportive and loving the community of horror is for the most part. I'm not saying there's not trolls. There's trolls everywhere, but
it's a good community, right?
Yeah, it's a really solid community that is very, very low judgment. They welcome everybody. And that's something I've really, really enjoyed. I've taken my fiance now to 2 different horror movie conventions or festivals, I should say, film festivals. And she's accepted, and she doesn't look like she's a horror movie fan, if that makes sense.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah, doesn't matter. She's not like, nobody was gothed out. I'm not gothed out. Like I think there's a feeling that you have to be like, we have to be running like some kind of goth subreddit or something like that. And then we also like horror.
Oh, you're a horror fan, are you? What?
Yes.
Name 5 slashers.
Oh yeah, the gatekeeping of it. There's always a little bit of gakeeping, but
I was
not too
saying
bad
that because there's not a lot of that. You're right. The horror community is very accepting and very nice people.
Yeah,
Salt of the earth.
A great statement for me to end with that I find just abundantly true is, if you show me a tatted up person, a biker who likes horror, I'll show you a person that's cosplaying as a mean person that's secretly really, really nice. And if you show me like a hipster, tree loving, recycling every day, I'll show you a person that's show you a really mean person cosplaying as a nice person. And that statement has been very true in my life. I have all the people that look like they're scary as hell are the nicest people I've ever met. And all the people look like they, oh man, guys, so let's just all love each other, end up being so mean. That's not always the case, but man, if I was doing like, that's a thing I would literally tell my child as a true statement, because those are, those are the people. Like that's how I view life like that. I don't know if you guys have that experience, but.
I mean, people wear different masks for different reasons.
Ooh.
Yeah. I like that. That's another good quote. We got a couple of good quotes for this episode.
Quotes.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we'll put together a bio page for you and link to whatever you'd like to link to before you hit the closing. You want to let everybody know what you're currently working on?
Yeah, absolutely. So the easiest things to find, we have a show in Times Square, the Murder Mystery Company. You can check out New York Dinner Theater. Thanks. You can check out NewYorkDinnerTheater.com. That will take us to the show, Speak Easy, Die Softly. If you are listening in a state in America, we likely have a murder mystery by you. So head to the murdermysterycompany.com. And we do public and private shows. So if you're thinking about a birthday or something like that, or thinking about doing something special, that's one of the things. I probably have a million things to plug. I'll also very briefly plug Camp Dragon, because I do run a Camp Dragon online, which is D&D Online, little company that I really like that's pretty special.
Cool. Well, yeah, like I said, I'll get together with you offline. You can send me links to those and we'll put them on your bio page.
Brilliant.
Cool. Well, again, thank you. And thank you to anybody out there listening. Please come visit us at horrormakesushappy.com. We've got a link to the episodes page was where you'll be able to find Scott's bio. We've also got a link tree link on the front page that links to everything else that we've got, merch, all kinds of Patreon, buy us coffee, all that fun stuff.
All that shit.
Yeah, got to do the thing that I hate doing, like, share, subscribe, tell a friend.